I'm Diane Camacho, and I may not know all of you. I appreciate you being here, even if we have a small group. Since we do have a small group, if anybody wants to talk about something that might be happening in real time for you, please feel free to bring it up. We can talk about it and kind of banter about ideas if it becomes appropriate. So we're going to talk today about what I call the cohesive team of 2024. And we've all been through a lot in the last few years. We've gone home, come back, trying to get people back to our office, all of that kind of thing. But what we really need to remember is that we all work for people. Nobody works for a law firm. They work for a person or people that they report to. It could be a partner, it could be an owner, it could be a practice group leader. Whoever they are working for, that's who they're affiliating with. And that's who they are expecting to have the relationship with. I worked for Skadden Arps. I never met Skadden or Arps, didn't expect to. So we just have to remember that the people that are at our firms are looking at us as the leaders to become committed to and to trust. So the agenda today, we're going to talk about trust and commitment, and then we're going to talk about the virtual world. So what's going on in the virtual world? How is that changing? And how can we work toward a cohesive team in a virtual world? And then we're going to talk a little bit about hiring. And hiring is one of the things that can be very frustrating for law firms, and just talking about some tips and hopefully give you some information about how to make good hires. There's also a couple of handouts. One of them is the slide deck. The other one is going to be a hiring guideline that I wrote several years ago. Those will come out when my assistant joins later in the session. She'll put them in the chat for us. So let's just start by talking about trust and our relationships. One of the things that one of the things that we know through time is that we need to build good relationships with our employees. They don't have to be, you don't have to have them over for dinner, and you don't have to have, these personal relationships and go to their wedding and all of that kind of thing. But they have to trust you, and you have to trust them. And then based on the trust, then the commitment comes, it kind of follows where you trust. And people, we trust people who are honest, who are reliable, who do what they say they're going to do, who are safe, who people that I can share information with and it can remain confidential, and they can be somebody that will support me to a conclusion, aren't going to be judgmental. And normally we trust people that are like-minded. We trust people that look like us, act like us, maybe went to the same college as us, and now politically might be like-minded with us. But those are people that we kind of automatically trust, people that are from our pack or our community. And once we trust somebody, then we give them our commitment. We're invested in what their goals are and what's going on around them. We're going to work through problems. So when somebody trusts you at the office and there's a problem, they're not going to just leave. They're not going to just complain about everything. They're normally, if they trust you, are going to come to you and talk to you about that problem and try and work through the problems with you. They're often much more willing to help people that they trust, and they often respect people that they trust. So when we're looking at our relationships in the office, it's really important to think about the trust, where the trust is, if we are showing trust, if we trust those around us, if those around us trust us. And one of the things that is really important for us to look at is these generations in the workforce. We talk about the generations. And it's important because our values and our morals a lot of times are driven by our lives, what's happened in our lives, how we were raised, what was going on in the world. And these activities or issues or events are often called signposts. So if I'm looking at a timeline and I'm looking at the people that are, running the government, who are and still traditionalists, still in the workforce. Some of them are leading law firms still. A lot of them are starting to retire from law firms. They've gotten to the point where they feel comfortable retiring. COVID led them, kind of, they didn't want to go through the change, and it's like it's time to do it now. A lot of baby boomers, aging baby boomers who might have retired earlier, but 2008 kind of wiped out their savings, 401ks, things like that, had to work longer. And now they're kind of saying, okay, I'm done. I'm in my 70s and I need to kind of stop. So they're still around. And these folks are the traditionalists. So when we start to understand what happened during their formative years, and their formative years are the years that I consider somebody is coming out of the family and neighborhood. They're seeing that there's a bigger world out there. And it's usually starting, when we're 10 or 11, we start seeing the world in a bigger place. Maybe, we see things on TV. It used to be. Now it's the internet. We're exposed to bigger and more impactful things. So those are the types of things that might shape our trust, might shape our work ethic, might shape how we see ourselves in the world and how we want to operate in the world. And so as we go through the different generations, we'll talk a little bit about that. So if we're talking about the traditionalists who are hopefully retiring, I hope nobody is over 70 on this call, but if you are, then you're having probably a more difficult time with understanding the younger generations, and the younger generations are having a harder time understanding you. I really feel like I need to put something together for the Gen Zs and millennials, and how to understand the Gen Xers and the baby boomers, because we've been told we have to understand them, but it's important that they understand us as well. So if we're looking at the traditionalists, we're looking at people uh, that were exposed to the world wars, were taught to be respectful. They were very disciplined. They might have had to work for the family to help put food on the table during the Depression and coming out of the Depression. They were very loyal. Family was very important. Loyalty was very important and was rewarded. And there was a chain of command. There was a chain of command in their households, and there was a chain of command in their work life. There was an owner, there was a father, if you will, at the head of the table, and they knew where they fell in that chain of command. And there was a expected respect for the folks in authority. We were the United States, we were the winners of the war. We were the white knights. We came in and helped, stop World War II. And it was a relatively small generation because of the fact that the Depression limited people having children. They were often called the silent generation because they tended to conform. They sought stability. They wanted to have a stable home and a stable income, and they were relying on the business owners and the corporations to give them security in their work. And then the baby boomers are the kind of the next generation, and we see that they were exposed to the Vietnam War. We obviously didn't win. There was a lot of unrest about that. There was more money in the world. There was the uh, government coming in and helping with programs so that we could come out of the Depression and we could become more self-sufficient and have our own homes and all of those kinds of things. So it really was the beginning of the consumer generation. We had more money. I was watching something last night and they talked about the credit cards coming out in the 50s and how people were amazed that you could buy something and you didn't have the money. You didn't have to have the money for it, and the wars between the Visa card and American Express. It was really interesting in how the credit industry affected our ability to buy more and do more. And we were looking more at equality and equal rights. You were seeing the riots race riots across the country at the same time that we're looking at the free love in the San Francisco Bay Area. Very different things happening at the same time. People wanting to be able to express themselves and have rights for themselves. Very different rights, but rights. Also, when you were thinking about the traditionalist model at work, you were thinking about the fact that if I came in as a um, office services person, if you will, I was probably going to retire as an office services person. Maybe I might have been a senior office service person. But baby boomers, we expected to work our way up in the company. I was a secretary and I worked up myself up to being a manager, and now I own my own company, and we expect to be able to be rewarded by working hard, and part of the reward is advancement. We also were, getting cars and homes in the suburbs, and um, military spending was up. So there was a lot of money in the economy. There wasn't as much respect for money and respect for things as the traditionalists had. And then we come into the Gen Xers and we start seeing, Watergate. We see that we can't trust our president. We can't trust the companies that we have seen our parents get laid off from. So the big corporate layoffs start happening and affecting our families. The divorce rate goes up for the first time, and is the highest divorce rate. Latchkey kids, you'd go home after school and you were told, hey, you need to get this and this and this done before we get home. And that was kind of the instruction or supervision you had. Gen Xers are very self-sufficient. They just want you to tell them what to do, what you want them to do, and they want to go and do it and not have a lot of supervision and not have a lot of check-ins and how's it going. They feel like you don't trust them if you're asking them all the time if you have finished that task or something like that. We work into the starting to lose trust in a lot of things around us. And then we have the millennials who were exposed to 9/11. So we went from the world wars where we were the white heroes to being bombed and being attacked. So now you really can't trust anything. Um, we can now be, bombed. And, the Cold War was scary for a lot of us. And, baby boomers were told to drop and roll into their desk, stop, drop, and cover, like that would have helped. However, it happened for the millennials. AIDS happened for the Gen Xers and millennials. It was the first time there's kind of this, people were just dying really, and you didn't really know why or how. It was certainly in California, certainly where I am in the Bay Area, it affected all of us. Somebody knew somebody, my kids knew somebody who had died from AIDS, and it was a horrible, scary kind of thing. These children were kept busy. They weren't allowed to stay at home after school by themselves. There were after school programs, and there were programs during the summer, and they never really got to be independent. They were very sheltered. And then when you're talking about the no losers, or the kind of idea that it's important for our children to have self-esteem, that kind of came at when the I can't remember the name of the guy that wrote the book, but the child self-esteem started coming into play. And my parents didn't, worry about my self-esteem. They weren't worried about whether they didn't think about me having to have respect for myself and be confident. They just, if they wanted to tell me to be quiet because I didn't have anything intelligent to say, they would say that. That wouldn't have been something that I would have said to my children. So again, we are changing how we are raising our children, and the whole no losers is interesting because baby boomers and traditionalists, we complain about them, but we raised them. So that's always an interesting kind of phenomena. But they were very sheltered. They want instructions. They want to know what is happening. They want an instruction manual, very, very different than the baby boomers, Gen Xers, who are more independent and don't want you necessarily to tell them how to do something. They just want you to tell them what they need, what you want them to do, and they will make sure it happens. Whereas the millennials and the younger generations are looking for the easiest way to do it, the more tech related solutions, the better. They want to have instructions, but they want to be able to modify those instructions if they think that it can be done faster or better. And then we have the Gen Xers who are kind of coming into it now, who coming into the workforce now. And the craziness of the last 15 years, it's been a crazy thing. One of the things that they are very accepting of is the kind of flexible family that the traditionalists and baby boomers have a little bit more difficulty accepting people who they are, and have more judgments about people who may not identify with a certain sex. The younger generations, most of them don't, that's just common in their worlds. They have friends maybe who have two moms or two dads. So that's much more common for them. The Black Lives Matter and the Me Too movements, these are not new movements. They've been going on and going on. These two movements are just our generations, or this, our lifetime examples of the people that constantly want to be heard and want to have an equal say and want to control their own destiny and be treated fairly. And then we're looking at the change in the demographics of the United States, where the minorities are not minorities so much anymore. The white wasps, however you want to say it, are going to be the minority very soon, very, very quickly. Communication styles, we have the written for the traditionalists, the baby boomers. We like to do it in person. There's the email, then the texts. Now we have tweets. That's all very difficult when you're attempting to communicate, and when you're attempting to give instruction or to ask a question. And it's difficult to understand exactly how you should communicate to each people, that each person or each generation or your teammates. And then we have cultural differences, and cultures can be the difference between San Francisco and New York, and how different places work, the South versus Michigan. People deal differently with communication, with conflict, with confrontation, based on their cultural differences. And just because they were born in the United States doesn't mean that they weren't raised with people that have very different cultural differences. Different ethnicities have different cultural expectations and comforts. And again, when we're building a team and we're trying to get trust and give trust, we have to understand some of what's going on and some of the makeup of the people on our team. And we have to understand that a little bit. So everybody wants to be a trusted member of a team, and that's what we're building in our law firms. We want to have a team that we can trust. Everybody's treated with respect. Everybody's treated fairly. People are given opportunities to stretch. It doesn't need to be promotion. It might be to create the training manual. It might be the opportunity to participate on a committee. And they want to be heard. Everybody wants to be heard. And it's difficult sometimes to take the time for somebody to be heard. It's not a quick and easy thing to be heard. And the difference is in the generations being heard, and where they want to be heard and when they want to be heard is very different. So, we've all experienced or heard or talked about the brand new junior secretary that comes into a firm meeting and makes a comment on how their copy machines are working, or why are we doing this, or questioning things in the middle of a meeting that the managing partner is conducting. That would not have been something that those of us that have been in industry longer and have more experience and perhaps less comfort with speaking out would do. So we have to understand it. For them, being heard might be very different than for somebody that's a Gen Xer or a millennial being heard. I want to be heard by going into somebody's office and having a one-on-one conversation with them. That to me is being heard. So again, understanding what people need and trying to um, educate them as well as understanding. There's nothing wrong with having coffee with a younger person in your firm, or even, over coffee saying, I was, in our meeting yesterday, you were, it was great that you felt comfortable enough to participate, but I think it would have been more effective if you would have spoken to me separately, or you would have gone to the office manager with that after the meeting and had a conversation there, and not had made that comment or those comments in the general meeting. It was a little distracting or something. There's no reason why we can't have these conversations with the people that we need to understand how we want to work in our law firm, how we want to communicate and be effective together. So the trusting others is really interesting. Sometimes it's a lack of self-awareness. You might be saying to somebody, or somebody might be saying to you, hey, how's that project you're working on? And you're thinking, wait a minute, it's not due for 30 days. Why are you asking me now? Don't you trust that I'm going to get it done? Or um, uh, what are you working on? Well, I'm working on something for somebody else. You know, are you questioning it? Because, why are you asking me these questions? Kind of, they feel like you're not trusting them. And it's just because you may not be aware that what you're saying is giving the impression of not trusting them. Sometimes it's just risk averse. It takes it takes an kind of an open environment to have a really trusting team. I've worked in big firms where there's a philosophy that you have your software and either it's open for everyone and you only put an ethical wall in when necessary, versus it is locked down for everyone and you only give access when necessary. So those are two different things. When I've worked in law firms where they locked everything down and only gave me access when I needed it, and I had to go and ask somebody to get access to a new case that I'm working on for somebody, that was very frustrating. It was kind of insulting. It stopped the workflow, kinds of things. And it made me feel like they didn't trust me, that the powers that be didn't trust that I knew what was appropriate to talk about and what was not appropriate to talk about. There's also kind of a fear that you can't trust. I was working in a large firm and I was supervising a secretary who had gone down to only one attorney that she was representing, and the firm was taking on a very big, highly high profile litigation. And we in our office were going to be taking it on because it was in our jurisdiction. And I thought this would be a great opportunity for her to kind of manage this, kind of be the hub of this trial team. And I thought it would have been fun. I thought, gosh, she must, this is a great opportunity. It would be fun. And when I was sharing it with her, what I thought in my excitement, she was not excited. She had her arms crossed. She was very quiet. She didn't seem excited. It didn't seem like a great opportunity to her. And I really didn't understand what was going on. I just didn't know what was going on and why she felt that way. Well, she thought that I was putting her in that position so that she would fail and I'd fire her. Um, I that never even came into my mind, but I had no idea she felt that way, and I did not approach her in the appropriate way. I assumed that she trusted me. I assumed that she thought that what I told her was the truth, where in actuality, she thought that what I was telling her was a lie based on her experience. So don't assume that you're trusted. I guess that was my lesson there, was to really have those conversations and ask how they feel about things, and what do you think about this, versus saying, hey, look at this great opportunity, da, 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 and trying to build trust before you um, make changes like that, or just to constantly be working on being consistent and um, being fair, and doing all of those things that will gain trust from your team. You have to give up some control. You have to be able to let people work the way they want to work within given parameters. It's difficult when you have a vision in your mind and you want somebody to do something exactly the way you want it, exactly the way you envision it done. And we have to sometimes kind of give that up a little bit and say, well, the end result is the same. Maybe I don't have to control how they got here, or, what it looks like, or things like that, if I get the right information and I get what I need from that. And then the other piece is sharing information. In a law firm, it's very scary. One of the things that was always scary was when all of a sudden all the partners started going into offices and closing doors. That was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Well, maybe they were hiring new people and they were talking about candidates, and it had nothing negative to do. Whereas if everybody in the firm understood that, hey, we're looking for folks, we're going to be interviewing, we're adding to staff, da, 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 da. If you know anybody, let us know. Everything's much more collegial. Nobody is worried about their jobs. There are things that you can't share. But I've had people come up to me and ask me questions. I say, I'm not at liberty to give that information out. I'm not at liberty to say, I can't discuss that with you right now. But as soon as I can, I will. And it's nothing that's going to directly affect you. Something like that, so that they know that they can come and ask. And there are things that you can share and things that you can't. But this whole need to know basis is kind of insulting for those people that are out of the need to know area, because it isolates people and it makes them feel like you don't trust them. So thinking about what information you're sharing and how you're sharing that information can also help build trust. So gaining trust. So you have new people coming in and you want to gain their trust, or you're the new managing partner or whatever. You have to understand that people, first and foremost, people trust differently. I trust you until you tell me I shouldn't, until you show me I shouldn't. Most people are not like that. But that's my assumption, is that everybody is like that because that's how I'm like. Well, I've learned that through my career, that that's definitely it's not the case. Knowing and understanding the folks on your team, understanding where they come from as far as their experience and perhaps their age, and the younger generations just aren't as trusting as we were. They don't trust us. They don't trust that you're, as a leader, going to take care of them and are going to always have a job for them, and that if they work hard, they'll have a job. They believe that they have to take care of themselves. Nobody else is going to take care of them, and they need to look out for themselves. So they are not going to be committed and be loyal the way other people who trust more regularly, or more easily trust. They don't trust that you're not going to lay them off. They don't trust that you're not going to leave the firm and take all the client. They just don't trust as easily. So you have to understand that, and then you have to kind of work on building trust for the team. And that's done by, you know, building norms and sticking to them. It's done by, if this is the guideline, if this is our policy, this is how we handle this situation. When there are policies willy-nilly, and when Diane gets to do something that Tom doesn't get to do because Diane's been there longer, it doesn't work with the trust. It doesn't work with the team. And I know that a lot of times, especially with this remote work, well, you've worked with this person for 20 years. Of course you trust that person to work from home. And here's this person that's been there 3 months and they're like, well, Sally's working from home. Why can't I work from home? Well, I've worked with Sally for 20 years. I've only worked with you for 3 months. You need to be comfortable having that conversation and giving that person some guideline to when they might be able to do that. If you are allowing certain people to be late, simple thing, allowing certain people to be late, and then other people, because their partner doesn't like it, get nagged at all the time because they're 10 minutes late, where over here this partner doesn't care, and so their people, his or her people are late all the time. You need to come to some agreement as a partnership, as a firm, and develop norms and stick to them, and develop things that you can administer honestly and fairly. So you can look at somebody in their face and tell them why. Why did you get this inadequate review? Why did I tell you you can't take vacation next Friday? Well, you don't have any left and I'm going to trial. And if that's true for everybody, then that's what builds the trust. That's what makes the team more succinct. You have to address conflict immediately. You have to address conflict immediately. Do not allow people on your team to be fighting and arguing and having these undercurrents and walking around the office so that they don't have to walk by that person's desk. You need to get in there and you need to figure out how to bring those two people, two or three or how many other people, back to the fact that this is a job, this is work, and we need to be respectful, and we need to be able to get client work in an excellent manner out the door. Those are our goals. And the two of you not talking to each other and undermining each other's efforts does not serve our clients. So how can we get back to the place where you can be respectful? And if they can't reach that, if they can't get there, and it's causing a disruption, then something needs to be done. You cannot allow these festering situations to continue. And a lot of us are afraid right now. It's like, well, who am I going to get to replace this person? I don't want to work with them. Their work is good, but they're horrible to everybody in the office. But what am I going to do if, in fact, I let that person go and I can't find anybody? What's worse? You're going to find somebody. It may take a while, you may have to train them, but if you have a caustic person on your team, it is affecting the entire team. And the entire team is expecting that this is acceptable and that they can do it or whatever. You need to um you need to address those situations. You really need to pay attention to those conflicts. And then you need to find a way to kind of build personal bonds. And I had a boss one time and he said, well, Diane, I want you to take every person on your team out to coffee. And I'm like, from, the 80s, I never wanted to, I would have died if my boss said, you want to go out and have coffee. And for me, I have to be fair. That would mean that I would have to go to coffee with each one of them. It would have had to been the same amount of price. If somebody got a donut, the other person would have had to get a donut. And I would have to spend the same amount, it would have been a chart. And there are ways to build bonds without having to go out of your comfort zone and make sure that you're fair and you're honest. Now, some people, that would have been great and that's how they do it and that works for them. For me, I that doesn't work for me. I would rather have lunch, all of us together, than have one-on-ones with people in that kind of an environment. I might have individual conversations with them. We would have, quarterly check-ins where we would have individual conversations. I would, say hello and how are you doing and things like that, but I wouldn't necessarily take them outside the office and have these individual meetings. But whatever it is for you, you need to figure out how to develop those personal bonds. And normally it's by sharing your personal, what's going on for you. Oh, I just had a baby, granddaughter, we're going down to, things like that, where you're sharing, then other people are going to be more comfortable sharing with you. But trust is based on shared experiences that can be founded in a lot of commonalities. There's one woman that I hear speaking that says that you can always talk to somebody about kids. I'm going to lose it. Vacation, traveling, kids, and I think where they grew up or something like that, that everybody, you can always talk about those things. You can always bring those things up in a conversation without being offensive. So kind of having conversations that you're sharing and they're hopefully sharing with you. We're going to move on to virtual work challenges. Does anybody have any questions before we move on? Okay, let's move on. So virtual work challenges. It's really hard to trust somebody if you're not to learn to trust somebody if you're not working right next to them and you're not kind of having that personal relationship. It's very difficult to do it over Zoom and all of these kinds of chats and things like that. But the challenges are building the trust, is monitoring performance, is making sure that the priorities are all in line when somebody's not in the office with you. Changes to the team, difficult to integrate people, difficult to train people, as I say here, and then sharing resources. How do you share resources when you're virtual? So those are some of the challenges that we're having somebody know, well, how am I doing? And how do I know if I'm doing okay? And, the person hasn't responded to me in 2 days. Does that mean that, I did a really bad job? Silence can be kind of scary. It can be offensive. So, those kinds of things are important. So when we're looking at assigning work, so you're in a lead position and you're assigning work. So in person, we might see them in the corridor and say, hey, come by my office later on because the Travis case is heating up and I have some things I need you to do for me. I worked with a man that I loved dearly. We never had to talk. He didn't ask me about my weekends. And he had an inbox and an outbox. Now, some people think, oh, I could never work for him because he didn't develop a personal relationship with me. We developed a personal relationship over time. We worked with each other for years. But I could just go into his office and pull out everything from the outbox and put everything that I got done in the inbox. And that's how you can't do that virtually. And a lot of us are used to kind of dropping something off on somebody's desk or going up to their desk or calling them into the office and saying, hey, I need some help with this. What do you got going on? Da, 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 da. You can't do that virtually. We all know that. And that is part of the desire to bring people back to the office is that interaction and that ability to communicate on the fly, if you will. I find that attorneys don't give work to people they don't see. So if you've got somebody that's working remotely from Texas and you've got, an associate from Texas and you've got an associate that's in an office 2 days a week or 3 days a week, 2 doors down from you, you're more inclined to work with the attorney that you see than you are to remember and work with the attorney that's remote. It's just one of those things that happens. It's easier to go remote and have a virtual team if the team has been in existence. So we've helped firms start up, and if it is a team that's been working together, so it's a practice group leaving a firm, they're more inclined to say we can go virtual because we all know and trust each other. I know that work that person's work ethic. I know their work quality. I know that I can trust them with what they need to do. We don't, as I said earlier, we don't trust people until they've given us a reason to trust them. So that's difficult in a virtual world. We have the Teams, we have email, we have text, we have electronic tasks. It's just not the same as having that one-on-one interaction. So what you need to do is you need to set up guidelines. Is it team guidelines, firm guidelines, whatever it is? What are the expectations? What are the rules? How do we communicate? Do we communicate? I communicate only by email. Your group communicates by text. How do you track tasks? When you're assigning tasks, how do you know what you've assigned? Especially if you're using Teams, texting, and you've got an email, you're giving assignments out so many different ways unless you have a way to track those tasks, a way to either assign them all at the same time, in the same way, or have some system to track those tasks and be able to go back to them. And what's the response time? If I email somebody, I've been in the legal community a long time. I understand that I should be responding to people very rapidly. Rapidly means different things. I find myself, and I'm sure that each of us, living and working out of our email box sometimes, and I have to stop myself and close my email box and say, okay, I need to spend a few hours on this particular project. But the newer people, and when you're in a virtual situation where you can't just walk by somebody's desk and check on it, you need to say, this is my expectation. My expectation is that I'm going to give you assignments via email. I want you to put those assignments into our practice management software. And I want to hear a response from you that says heard within 4 hours. So I know when I've assigned something, you've received it, and it could be a received or heard, or I calendared this or whatever, some acknowledgement that I have given you a task. And then you need to have scheduled communications. These must be scheduled communications. These are not the every once in a while you happen to Teams chat with somebody because you have a question for them. As a team, you should be meeting regularly. Regularly and often, quite frankly, it should be weekly. And then you should have individual meetings with your team members. And this can be hard and kind of arduous, if you will. Again, if you're not seeing people and you can't have impromptu conversations, you must schedule them. They have to have an opportunity and know when they can ask you questions, when they can question their work product, when you can give them feedback that may not be the most positive feedback. The team needs to know what's going on as a team. Again, you're not in the office. I'm not talking to so-and-so, letting them know what I'm working on. I don't know that there's a trial going on because I don't see the conference room full of all the trial materials. I don't see the closing documents, whatever it is. People don't know what's going on. You need to make sure that everybody feels comfortable. And if people need help, they can offer the help or they can ask for the help. So you need to have scheduled communications. It can't be on the fly. Weekly meetings with your team should be required, and maybe every couple of weeks. We're virtual. I talk to my team members almost every day. If we go a few days and we haven't at least said hello on Teams, then we're kind of like, but that's not possible for all teams. And then when you're trying to give feedback for the older generations, I'm going to say my generation, no news was good news. I don't want feedback. I don't need feedback. I assume if you're giving me feedback, it's going to be bad feedback. I'm afraid to ask for feedback, all of these things. Even after 35 years with working with attorneys, I feel uncomfortable saying, well, how did I do? Whereas the younger generations want to know how they're doing. They're used to feedback. They're used to, oh, great, good job. They're used to that. I wasn't used to that. I raised my children expecting to hear, great job, good job. Those are the things that we told our children. So the people that we're frustrated with are our children and grandchildren, and we are the ones that raised them. People think that they are not as committed. They don't work as hard. They're very committed. They work very hard. They just do different things. Their priorities are different. Their priorities are not necessarily my job. For the baby boomers, we were our jobs. We are our jobs. We will tell you about our life through the different jobs we've had. My father did that before he passed away. He went through his life based on his jobs because that's who he was. You talk to younger people in the 30s and 20s and 30s, and they're like, I'm not my job. That just happens to be what I do in order to make money so that I can do this. I can travel, or I can raise my family, or I can go to the soccer games. It's just a different priority. So some tools are workflows. Now you can get software that has workflow, so you can put the workflow in and it can say, I want task A done. And when task A gets done, then it triggers task B needs to be started. And then somebody gets an email. So those are workflows where you can say, if this happens, if we get a motion in, we need to calendar it, we need to respond by this date, we need to, whatever those workflows are, if it's an estate plan, whatever those workflows are. Your practice management software is definitely a project management software can definitely be a tool. That's something like Asana or Monday or those kinds of things where it's a project management software outside of maybe your practice management software. There's ways to record meetings now. I'm recording this meeting. It's been very helpful with me with clients. I can get the summary of the meeting, and at the end of the meeting, it has what tasks need to be done by who. It's Fathom. I'm really happy with it, although it's annoying in some ways. Understanding who in the firm or who on your team does what is really important for any team, but for a virtual team. Who do I call if I have an IT issue? Who do I call if I have a problem with my benefits? Who do I call if I have a question about my I don't know, my software? Literally a list of who to call in what situation. Who do I talk to if I have a problem with my payroll? And then having a good form example library for people to be able to draw from. Now, with the software that we have now, with the searching capabilities for document management and those kinds of things, it's a lot easier to have a brief bank is what we used to call them, but a forms library or example library. So having those tools is very important for people to be able to work remotely and to be part of the team. Over communicate. Always include everybody. Make sure your email distribution lists are updated every time somebody is hired or somebody leaves. It's an annoyance, but it's so important for new people not to get left off of firm communications. If there's a way to videotape maybe the founding partner or maybe the HR person or somebody to have like welcome videos for people so that when you're onboarding someone, you can have 3 or 4 3-minute videos from these people. They can feel like they're getting to know them, getting to know their role. Make every attempt to have some kind of in-person onboarding piece if possible, even if it's just, again, having that one-on-one, developing that trust. Maybe it's for the first 3 months, you have to work in the office, and then we're going to work on a hybrid situation. When you're hiring, that's often acceptable to people. When you're saying, well, we do offer a hybrid environment, but we need to make sure that we're working as a team first. Social interaction is really important. We knew this, we learned this in COVID, and it's kind of slipped off a bit, especially with some people coming to the office and some people not. The morning coffee on Zoom on Wednesdays. Anybody that wants to just get together and chat on Wednesday morning at 9 o'clock, I'm going to have my coffee. Let's get together. For those people that are available, having outings. Let's meet for a walk on Saturday morning. If you are a firm that's fully remote, I highly recommend having quarterly all firm events. It doesn't have to be at the Ritz-Carlton in Monterey. It can be in, whatever town the managing partner lives. Our retreat was, people stayed at my house and we did things at my house and, we went out and had a nice dinner. It doesn't have to be this event. It just needs to be a way for people to get together and to bond together. Bring lunches in the office for who happens to be in that day. It's not, oh, Wednesday's lunch day, so everybody only goes to the office on Wednesday, they get their lunch and then they leave and go back into their office. You need to be a little bit more spontaneous with that in a sense. And remember COVID's virtual events. We had chocolate tasting, wine taking, we had trivia. Those things don't have to go away just because COVID's over. If you're virtual, you want to figure out ways to have those kinds of fun events that you can get to know each other. So I have 4 minutes. I'm going to ask if anybody has any questions so far. I think that Carolyn's going to put some stuff in the chat. She's got my hiring handbook, and she's got the slide deck that she's going to give you. And there's also a survey that we're hoping that you can answer for us. It's very short. I think it's 4 questions. And I'm going to go to what I consider the most important piece of the recruitment right now. Oh, great. Thank you, Carolyn. Because we don't have a lot of time, and what I'm covering is in the hiring handbook. But what is really important right now is you must market your firm. I don't know if it ever, I don't know if this is a new thing. I just know that it's very important right now to stand out and to market your firm. And what makes your firm special? What do people there, what makes the people there special? Is it because everybody that's a partner now started out as an associate there, so there's definitely a partnership track, a partnership, you can make partnership here versus a firm that's owned by Diane Camacho and I'm the owner that's ever going to be an actual owner? Who are your clients? Are you representing we have a client that represents migrant farm workers in class action cases. That's a huge draw. People want to do good things. What are my growth opportunities? Am I going to be able to learn new things? Is there a path to partnership? So I'm going to just show you very quickly 2 ads for an associate, for a labor law associate, mid-range labor law associate. So this one is a plaintiff side employment firm located and looking for a blah. The applicants must, you have to be able to, we have competitive salaries commensurate with experience, This is primarily in an office position. And then we look at the next ad and it's, are you looking for a smaller environment where individuals make a difference? We seek an associate. Our size of the office allows for unique opportunities to lead the delivery of solutions for our clients. We build partnerships. Ideal candidate, you're going to have exposure to direct experience in employment litigation. Oh, you're going to have, I'm sorry. Creative thinkers and strategic approach. They give specific examples of what they do. They do wage and hire issues. They, help employee privacy, whistleblowing, and employment agreements. They offer benefits not typically seen in smaller firms. So you're saying, we're going to give you a little bit more than what other firms might be giving you, but it's selling the firm to this client. So if I were looking at these 2 job ads and I only wanted to respond to one, I'm certainly going to respond to this one versus, and if you go on Indeed and you start clicking through the ads, you're like, oh my gosh, I don't want, nothing gives me warm, fuzzy things. The other thing is, how you're asking your questions. Again, that's going to be in the handout. So that's our time. I hope that that was worth your time and that you got valuable information out of it. I hope that you'll be able to take our survey and give us feedback. If there are topics, these are topics that have to do with managing and operations. So I don't speak on the changing law in estate planning. I speak on software selection. I speak on um, trust administration. I speak on how to operate a firm more efficiently. That's what my team does. We are legal managers by trade. We've all spent our careers working within law firms and are here to help law firms and owners be more efficient and have less stress. So that's our goal. Hope to see you again. Thanks so much.